Okay, we'll call the meeting to order. And before we get started, I'd like to acknowledge that this meeting is taking place in the traditional and ancestral territory of the Mi'kmaq people, and we are all treaty people. So to approve the agenda. So moved by Councillor Mosier, seconded by Councillor Duggan. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Approval of the minutes from the December 12th council meeting. Moved by Councillor Bertle, seconded by Councillor Sanford. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Opposed. And then on to the 20-minute session of public input and questions. Now, we have one name. Gail, is your question about the budget, or is it? Okay, well, then we'll wait until number 7 and wait till it's presented, and then we'll call you up, okay? Thank you. So there's no public input and questions. I think that's the first time since I've been elected, so awesome. So we'll move on to number 6. This is going to be the presentation of the capital budget, town, general, and water utilities. So the way it's going to work is we're going to let staff go through the entire budget, and then when the staff is done, then we as councillors, we can ask questions and the public can get up and make their presentations at that time. So Jamie, you want to say a few words?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of council. For the public record, my name is Jamie Doyle. I'm the Chief Administrative Officer here at the town of Lunenburg. Momentarily, you'll receive a presentation from our Finance Director, Lisa Dagley, our Director of Engineering and Public Works, Tyson Joyce, and our Director of Community Development, Hilary Grant, regarding the 2024 capital budget. I want to take a moment to thank them and their teams for the incredibly responsible budget, bringing forward an incredibly responsible budget that aligns with our community comprehensive plan. As council hears the presentation, I'll ask that questions be saved until the end. This allows us also time to tabulate any suggested amendments. Alternatively, this budget is presented so it can be approved this evening. Should council choose to defer this decision, we'll also need to decide whether it'll be done at a special meeting or at the next regularly scheduled meeting. I should note that the sooner we release the capital budget, the sooner we begin tendering processes and get more competitive bids. With that, Mr. Mayor, I'll turn it over to Lisa. Thank you.
Thank you, Jamie, and thank you, Council. So this evening, I will provide a brief overview of the 24-25 capital budget, along with a summary of the funding and reserves before turning the presentation over to my colleagues, who will go over the individual projects. The capital budget for 24-25 is just under $3 million, with a majority of that spent on public works, infrastructure, and equipment projects at $1.9 million. The capital budget is funded through a variety of reserves, grants, and some debt financing in the amount of $575,000. Grants have been noted wherever there are an active application for a project, and staff are continually monitoring grants to determine if there are any new funding opportunities for the town. The town has a variety of operating and capital reserves established either under the MGA or by council policy, bylaw, or direction. The operating reserve is estimated to be $1.5 million at March 31st, 2024. The largest portion of this reserve is related to the water utility or the wastewater treatment plant. It's annual capital funding and the plant upgrade financing. The projected balance of the capital reserve at March 31st, 2024 is $1.8 million. The majority of these funds have annual revenue streams, such as the Canadian Community Building Fund, formerly known as gas tax, which is allocated annually to the town based on our uniform assessment, which is approximately $225,000 annually. And our deed transfer tax rate is set at 1.5%, which is the highest currently allowed under legislation. 1% is allocated to capital annually, and 0.5% is allocated to our operating budget. Additionally, future reserves will be discussed in more depth when we review the 24-25 operating budget, as funds to be contributed to reserves come from the operating budget. As previously noted on numerous locations, the town has been planning for an upgrade at the wastewater treatment plant and the proposed $3 million debt financing, while continuing to target a 15% debt financing limit. Using the debt affordability model from the Municipal Finance Corporation has been allowing staff to balance the current municipal debt financing requirements while planning for future capital years. Next, I'll turn the presentation over to my colleagues to take council through each individual capital budget project.
Thank you, Lisa, and good evening, council. We're going to start with the town general portion of the capital budget. So starting with building improvements, at Town Hall, we have the retaining wall along Townsend Street. So the work consists of the refacing of the exposed concrete face of the wall. It's an important component because it supports the sidewalk along Townsend Street, supports the accessible ramp we have to get to council chambers, and supports the roadway in general. So council may recall that this was included in the 23-24 capital budget. We did tender this project this year and didn't receive a single tender. Potentially that was to do with the timing. We kind of tendered that in the fall. We'd be looking this year to get out much earlier and get the attention earlier. We've also increased the budget from $100,000 in the 23-24 to $150,000, recognizing the importance of this project to the roadway, to Town Hall and access. So moving on to the blue building on Victoria Road, we have some exterior repairs identified. These would be repairs to the roof and the siding. And the windstorm that we experienced in December particularly highlighted these issues. We lost some shingles and had some water into the building. So this is important work. We have a budget of $40,000 for this work included. Moving on to the old fire hall, following an item that will appear in the operating budget. We have conceptual designs for the repurposing of that building. So we have a budget of $30,000 for that item. Lunenburg Academy, we have roof repairs at the 4 tower locations in the building. So we've been consistently dealing with leaks at all 4 towers. Sections of the rolling roof need to be upgraded. And then the existing shingles have also deteriorated over time and require restaining. So through community development, the town is, and Hillary, you correct me if I say this incorrectly, but the national cost sharing grant application's been put in association with the Lunenburg Academy Foundation. So we're cooperating and working together on that one, and we'll know in the spring the outcome of that application. Moving on to the programs, we have the beautification with the urban forest, and this would be a continuation of the popular and successful tree planting program that's been underway the past few years. So we have a budget of $40,000 identified for that. Sidewalk renewals. So we have the Green Street Sidewalk Renewal Project, which is the removal and the replacement of the existing sidewalk and widening it from 4 feet to 5 feet for better accessibility reasons. This project was deferred from the 23-24 capital budget to provide additional funding into other projects, as you may recall. The design for this project's already at 90%. We're pretty much ready to go with it. And if you recall from the December 12th meeting, council approved staff applying for a grant for this project as well to help with the funding. So the budget for this is $400,000. Staff have increased it from the 23-24 budget of 325,000. Again, trying to capture some of the market factors that we're experiencing through the industry. Another sidewalk renewal project that's been identified is Pelham Street from Shipyard Hill to town limits. So this is an existing asphalt sidewalk that's in poor condition, very uneven, and has potholes and patches in it. So the sidewalk length's approximately 375 meters, and we have a budget of $35,000 for the engineering and the design work, with the intention of executing the work the following year. Another sidewalk renewal project we've identified is on Montague Street, just up from Blue Nose, Lower Street, Linden intersection. It's repairs and replacement to a portion of retaining wall that's used to support the sidewalk. So this project follows Public Works undertaking a structural assessment of the retaining wall with some recommendations. So the budget of $100,000 covers the detailed design for the retaining wall, the section that requires replacement, and more details on the repairs, the recommended repairs, and then the execution of the work. Moving on to new sidewalks, you'll see Tannery Road construction, which has already been approved by council, but we've identified this because there's been a change to the financing that we thought we should bring to council's attention. And then in terms of new sidewalks as well, we have a section on Montague Street. This would be an extension of the existing sidewalk, which runs to Civic 161 and extending it to Civic 169. So this extension would be about an extra 40 meters of sidewalk on the north side of Montague. It falls under the Streets and Services Extension Policy, where it was requested by someone, a resident of the town. And just in terms of the Streets and Services Policy, just as a reminder, the purpose of the policy is it provides guidance to town staff, public and developers regarding costs and procedures for delivering and installing street infrastructure, including sidewalks, to existing and new developments within the town. And then in terms of cost sharing provisions, cost sharing requests will be limited to 50% of the costs associated with the materials and installation, including associated repairs and labor costs of the service extensions, up to a maximum of $300,000, whichever is less. So Public Works estimate of the cost of this work is $30,000, just to bring it into the context with the Streets and Services Extension Policy. And that would be performed in-house by our crew if it was to proceed. Moving on to street reconstruction and resurfacing. We have a section of Pelham Street between Hobson and King Street. So this would be street reconstruction, including the subgrade, base gravels and asphalt, similar to what we performed recently on Duke Street and Prince Street. It's approximately 200 meters of high volume roadway that's in relatively poor condition. Part of this work would include checking the condition of the sewer in this area of town, making sure there's no issues before we go ahead and fix the road. In terms of the water main in this section, it's an 8-inch PVC service installed 25 years ago. So that's well within its lifespan. That would have lots of life left in it. So the budget for this work, which would include the engineering and the construction, is $350,000. Continuing with our street improvements, we have accessibility improvements, which would include things like pedestrian ramps and tactile strips. We have a budget of $20,000 for that kind of work. The flashing beacon lights, a budget of $15,000, which should allow us 2 or 3 more sets of those at applicable locations around the town. And then we have downtown traffic improvements, which are mainly operational improvements, including signage, pedestrian improvements, the speed radar signs that we have around town, these kinds of things, and a budget of $40,000 for that work. Onto the equipment for public works. So we have a new salt truck, which is a replacement for the 2009 model that I've taken a photograph from in the presentation. So originally this was scheduled for 25-26 in our planning, but with the supply chain issues that we've had replacing our plow truck that we've tried to do the past couple of years, we thought it was wise to move that ahead in case there was a delay in the procurement. We have a budget of $250,000 for that item. The 3/4 ton replacement truck. So this is the red truck that maybe you see around town. It's an everyday truck that's very important to public works day-to-day operations. The inspection on that vehicle runs out in April 2025. And it's going to be very difficult to get that vehicle to pass again, potentially. So we have a budget of $75,000 in order to have that vehicle in place before April 2025. The $75,000 and the time it would gives us the option of securing something new, but the time would also give us a good opportunity to survey the market for an appropriate secondhand vehicle and just buy some time with that to find the best fit. Miscellaneous tools, replacing and upgrading the tools that our crew uses day to day. So a budget of $20,000 for that item. So that concludes the public works portion. We'll move on to the wastewater treatment component. So starting with the various items, we have the upgrade and the replacement of the smaller capital items for the plant. So a budget of $35,000 for items like probes and tools, SCADA updates and equipment updates that are used within the plant. We have the raw sludge pump for the press. So this is a stage replacement of the existing pump used at the press. And this pump is used to pump the liquid that when the press presses the byproduct, the liquid goes back into the system and is reprocessed. So we have a budget of $35,000 for that item. And that is, as well as all the items that we're talking about for the plant, can be retained with the upgrades. The storm system, we have the storm separation plan. So this would be building on from the GIS modeling projects. This was a recommendation that came from that project. So this would be the creation of a master plan to coordinate our storm network for the future stage upgrades and storm separation projects. So this would help us make sure that the components on the downstream end of our system are suitably sized for everything that would be feeding from the upper lengths. It would help us make sure that the outflows are at a sufficient level to allow for rising sea levels, that kind of thing. And it would give us the map for going ahead. So we have a budget of $110,000 for that project. The sanitary system, we have the flow meter at the Blue Nose lift station. So this allows us to accurately measure potential overflows and is a key item for our reporting to Nova Scotia Environment. and Department of Fisheries and Oceans when these events occur. We have a budget of $20,000 for that item. And then we have the pump replacements at the lift stations. Again, this is a strategic asset replacement where these components have been doing a lot of work over the past 20 years. And although we do our best to maintain them, that there will come an end to their lifespan. We have a budget of $120,000 for that work. Fire department, we have the roof resealing and repainting, and this mainly concerns the flat areas on the roof that you can see on the sides of the front if you look at the photograph. Again, this was an item included in the 23-24 capital budget, was tendered, and we didn't receive any bids, unfortunately. And there's been some changes to the financing with this project as well. Again, our intention would be to get this out much sooner in the year when there's likely to be more interest. We have a budget of $90,000 for that work. And that concludes the town capital presentation.
Good evening. So given the scale and range of the town's capital needs, community development is proposing a handful of modest projects towards maintaining our recreation facilities and improving the inclusivity and accessibility of the town's public spaces, both priorities under the comprehensive community plan. First, on public request, and to demonstrate the town's commitment to truth and reconciliation, we propose adding a flagpole at the UNESCO monument for year-round Mi'kmaq use. This should cost $10,000 and will be coordinated to align with the Civic Square design work that is currently underway. Next, we suggest installing new interpretive signage at Sylvia and Labrador parks. These parks were renamed, as you know, on December 13th, 2022, and this project will communicate both the reason for the change and Black and Indigenous Lunenburg history to visitors and the public. The historical research, design, and installation of these signs should cost $20,000. The next 4 projects are all recreation complex maintenance to ensure the continued enjoyment of our facilities. The baseball diamond is popular, with rentals increasing, but unfortunately, flooding, especially in the spring, limits the field's use. Proposed baseball field repairs include installing a French drain tied to a box culvert so the field can be used more days of the year. This will be done in-house by Public Works to minimize the expense, but the cost will be approximately $10,000. The community center also suffers water issues. $20,000 would allow us to fix a non-functioning entrance and add a concrete base to stop water from entering into the building. This is considered important to ensure proper maintenance and use of the building moving forward. In spring 2023, an accessibility audit of the community center was completed. $40,000 is needed to make the primary entrance to the building accessible. Lastly, inside the community center, the gym floor needs to be repainted and sealed. This is standard maintenance that has been deferred over the years. This work can also be done in-house at a cost of $10,000.
I'll continue with the water utility capital budget. So for the plant and water production, we have the cleaning system at the water intake. So this is the supply and installation of the aerator system on the intake pipe at Dares Lake. This was carried in the 23-24 water utility budget. We proceeded with the engineering and have the design complete, but there was insufficient funds within the budget item based on the consultant's Class A estimate. We've gone back and revised that budget to be $70,000 to complete that work. We have the tank bypass line. So this would be the engineering work for the future install of a tank bypass at the water treatment plant. So this would be in the event that there was an issue with the storage tank and we needed to send treated water straight from the plant directly to town. At the moment, it needs to go from the plant to the tank to town. So having this bypass would help us avoid, would just streamline it if there are any issues with the tank. So we have a budget of $13,000 for the engineering work. We have hydrant flushing equipment, a budget of $10,000 for dechlorinating water that's expelled from the hydrants. And this would be best practice in the industry to operate this way. And then we have the manifold flushing system investigation. We've noticed a little bit of a restriction on the flow from the flock tank to the skids where the membranes have been recently replaced. We think potentially the manifold debris has built up in the raw water before it's treated. So we have $15,000 identified for that investigation in order to maximize the performance of the membranes that we've just recently put a large investment into. So moving on to building improvements, I'm sure council remembers the repair to the spillway. So we have the construction of the spillway at Dares Lake that would now include the eel passage that was required by DFO. This was the deferred project from 23-24. In 23-24, we included a budget of $200,000. We've revised that budget to $450,000, and that's based on the industry conditions. We did receive a single tender for that, and it was much higher than what was projected by the consultants. And this really is a key project for the longevity of the water supply. So we thought it was wise to increase that budget. We have the raw water pump house waterproofing of the foundation. Again, trying to protect the longevity of a key asset. We have a budget of $25,000 for that. We have the solar array at the water treatment plant. So this would be the construction of the ground mounted system. The design for the system's complete. So that work would need to be tendered. A budget of $385,000 for that project. The water system itself, we have the water meter rollout, which is the supply and installation of residential meters for customers. As you can see from the spreadsheet, that's projected to go across 2 years and would follow on from the initial work late this year. And then we have the new services and replacement hydrants, which routinely appear in the capital budget for the water utility. And we have a budget of $20,000 for each of those items. Continuing with the water system, we have the Harbourview Morash Loop, which is the construction of the new 6-inch line connecting Morash Lane and Harbourview Drive. It's removing a dead end from our existing system on Harbourview Drive. This project was deferred from the 23-24 budget, and that the budget has been revised. 23-24, we carried $120,000. Based on the tenders we received in 23-24, that's been significantly revised to $365,000. Again, trying to recognize the market conditions we're facing. The last two items we have here relating to the water system are engineering and planning items. So we have a various renewals item. We have a budget of $26,000 for the engineering and design. There's a number of options available to us in terms of the projects that we have there. And it may depend on what happens between now and the end of the year, which way we want to take that. And then we have the transmission main renewal, which would be the line that comes from the water treatment plant on Northwest Road all the way through town to the garden lots holding tank. This was identified as a key renewal item in our GIS modeling. So this would be the planning and preparation for the upgrade and renewal of that item. We have a budget of $100,000 for that item with construction following in subsequent years. That concludes the presentation. Thank you for your patience and attentiveness.
Thank you very much, staff. Now I guess we can turn it over to the floor to start. So Gail, you signed up to speak, but the way this works, where it's the budget, that the thing that Gail signed was really for the first part. So Gail will let speak first, and if anybody else in the audience wants to speak on behalf of the budget, they certainly can. And they each get 5 minutes to speak. You have to state your name and address, and that's how the public presentation works. But I'll give other people an opportunity if you want to speak after Gail. Okay.
My name is Gail Fullerton, and I live at 47 Dufferin Street. Questions generally about the budget. I'm happy to see that sewer diagnostic is part of the Pelham resurfacing, because that's certainly every street that we repave should include that kind of work up front. The question that I have specifically about the capital budget, we have over the next 5 years, more or less $40 million in capital upgrades to take care of. And that's pretty heavily weighted at the end of that 5-year period. I remember an analysis that had been presented, I think it was in the spring of 2023, about upgrades of some $40 million that included the electric utility, but that's not here. So I'm just curious about whether or not that analysis has changed in its scope, or whether there is there something that I'm missing. And the only other commentary that I'd like to make is that I see we have reserves of 1.5 million, projecting 1.9 by the end of the fiscal year, but we're also taking on $2.5 million in new debt. I don't expect answers to these right this minute, but those are just the comments I had. That's all.
Thank you. And
Thank you.
we'll refer that to staff. And okay, thank you very much. Does anybody else have anything like? Robert, come on up. Don't fall.
Is it on? Yeah, okay. Take me a minute or two. On Pelham Street, you're gonna put in new paving, right?
Through the chair, yes.
Okay.
Road reconstruction, yes.
Okay, are you gonna do a storm sewer there also?
So it would be important to assess the condition of the existing combined sewer.
Okay, I mean, my opinion is that when you're doing all this paving and out there in the Newtown area, it seems a shame if you're going to do the paving, you should probably doing the storm sewer at the same time, so that a few years from now, you don't have to dig up the new paving and put the storm sewer in. So I do it all at once. If you understand what I mean. Second thing, is there any upgrades for the town hall in this budget? I didn't happen to notice it. Maybe it's there and I missed it. I mean, I thought we was going to put in elevators and stuff like that at one time. No? No upgrades for town hall?
Not for this upcoming year. We still have
Okay.
assessments to be done to this building, and there's a
Okay.
lot going on internally in this building
Yeah.
to figure out before we start firing numbers out there that we actually know we need, because there'll be all kinds of probably funding applications going out at that time. So we have to know exactly what we're asking for and looking for when that day comes, Robert. I guess.
Okay, good. Robert Young, 225 Dufferin. I don't know if I've told you that or not. Son of a gun. What was I gonna say? Do we need a new building for public works? I mean, that used to come up when I was on the town council and the engineer, geez, I can't even think of his name now. He used to run and hide, he didn't want to deal with that. We had too much other things to deal with, Mark Bellavo, yeah, so do we, and if we are getting a new building, are we going to put it in the same location or different?
That's not in this year's budget either. So that's all part of a big scheme of things we're looking at, but that might come down the road. It might not. It all depends where it falls, I guess, in the skew is the way I understand. So that's not this year. So.
Okay, good enough. And the third thing, when it comes to this building and you have money for the academy, all our town-owned buildings, where possible, I think they should be converted to geothermal. Number one, well, it's environmentally friendly, but besides that, if it's geothermal, that means that money stays in the town, and that's what I'm after. You know what I mean? So I would, you have to have somebody do the assessments. It depends what kind of ground you have down there, whether you can do it or not. They have it at the Mahone Bay Center, and I guess it works out there. So, talk with those guys and meet with them and see see if it makes any sense. And if you really want to go whole hog and it works, maybe you should approach the churches and see if they want to go become geothermal too, because that would be the money staying right in the church instead of going outside of town, or it goes out when you have to buy the energy from Nova Scotia Power. So that's something that you people can look into over the time. Okay, I think that's all I have for you now.
Thank you, Robert. I knew coming here tonight you'd be speaking from my previous experience in council, so you didn't disappoint me. Thank you very much. We'll move on to 8 on the agenda, which is correspondence, and there's just some letters there. I got for first. I won't go any further. We'll get council now to ask budget questions. I guess I sort of jumped through that. We've been sitting here for a while on that, so we'll turn to council first. Does anyone have any questions? I'll start. I might as well start on the right. That way I don't miss anyone. Does anyone have any questions on this side of the room for the budget? Councilor Birtles.
Just one question through the chair to Tyson. When you were talking about on Montague Street for the retaining wall, is that speaking about where the accident was, where the vehicle went down between Grand Banker and Dockside? Is that being in this budget?
Through the chair, it's our intention to get that work complete as early as we can this year, once the conditions are good. So I would still see that as a 23-24 item. This Montague Street retaining wall item is further west. It's between that Blue Nose, Lower Linden intersection with Montague. It's just a little ways up there, and it affects a private residence there as well. Yeah.
Thank you. Now we'll go to the left side. Councilor Duggan, anything? Councilor Mosier.
Yeah, thank you, Worship. Through to Tyson, where we're having troubles like with some of the tenders, just having even anyone bid on them. Have we looked at doing like internal labor? I just refer back to a few years ago, we did a wastewater lateral off of Brook Street. The you know, the guys seemed to be quite engaged doing that. They enjoyed that. It was a different type of work for them to do, and, you know, sort of like break the routine. So is that, you know, is that an option for us, like particularly with the water main on, you know, that you talked about connecting the water main or something along that line, or is that too technical for them?
Through the chair, I don't think it's like we've talked about this before. Our crew is very capable, lots of experience, lots of knowledge. They've done most things. You know, I learn from them every day, and they're a great crew to work with. So I don't think it's fair to say it's technically past them. But what it does is, if they're tied to a project that's a multi-week project like that water main will be, then the tasks that they would have been performing routinely for the town that we get used to day, that stuff gets parked. And we have 7 guys in public works. If we're doing a project like this one, that's all of them occupied. So it's not that and I think we kind of had a similar discussion with Tannery Road, not to bring that one up myself. Yeah, maybe if I get ahead on it myself this time. But yeah, our guys are capable of doing that work, but it's a real opportunity cost of what they can't do while they are doing that work, and the things they provide to public works, assistance to the electrical utility, our water, our wastewater teams. I think there's I personally am reluctant to assign them to these longer duration projects, because I feel like we're giving up a lot by doing that.
And just one more through maybe to Lisa. When we look at our projections into like our 10-year projections, so we got some serious numbers there, like particularly around the academy and the town hall. So I understand that that doesn't have any impact on our rate. Capital budget doesn't have any impact on our rate until, of course, we borrow the money for this. So it looks like we're, you know, potentially a lot of borrowing coming up for this, where we're already hitting a ceiling with the wastewater treatment plant. The fire hall is almost like another wastewater treatment, not the fire hall, but the town hall. It's basically another wastewater treatment plant. So are we, you know, what tools can we use there to sort of try to mitigate the impact of a huge, you know, tsunami of expense coming our way?
Through the chair, your worship. Those are things that, as mentioned, that we'll be discussing more when we're at the operating budget, talking about future reserves. Certainly, we're waiting on the Tanner Road or Town Hall project just a bit to determine what we really need, so that we can figure out what grants might be available and what financing that does need to come from town sources, so that we can work at those reserves. But the 5-year budget that is here, the years, every year, like year 1 through 4, is potentially funded based on the information we have at this point in time. You know, budgets are always moving and getting new information all the time, but they are potentially funded. That's why that seems so heavy in year 5, because anything that we know is a project that is not able to be funded at this point has been parked out there, so that we can look at what we can do to try to help us when we get to those projects.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Halverson.
Definitely have some questions. So thanks for the presentation, and thanks to Councillor Bertels and Councillor Mosier. They actually asked a couple questions I had as well, but I just want to go, I've got about 4 quick hits if I think we can probably get through. Just on the Lunenburg Academy roof, I noticed that the Academy Foundation is involved in that financing application. Just curious, because it looks like they're funding a large amount, but I assume that is the grant that they're helping, or they're co-applying for with us. Can you just clarify that? And then the next question I have is, if we don't get that grant to do that roof, where is that money coming from? What budget will that be? What pot of money is that coming out of?
through the chair. That one there, yes, the amount that's listed right now under the Lunenburg Academy Foundation is including the grant and their sharing portion as well. We'll certainly have to have further discussions if the grant is unsuccessful about how to fund that project and move that forward.
I'll keep going then. The perhaps through to Tyson through the chair. Everyone obviously is going to have an opinion about what work should be done and why some people see it as priority, some won't. So if I could just get a clarification on how the sidewalk from the Pelham on the Shipyard Hill to the town limits, how that was identified as the top priority for this year.
Through the chair, it's a section of sidewalk that is asphalt. It's old, it's tired, it's in poor condition. We've had a number of observations shared with us by the public. I've been out and inspected it. It was one that in previous years has kind of been in the longer term plan for the town in terms of the 5-year look ahead, but it never quite made it to being worked on. So it was a combination of those factors that got us to include it.
So it's kind of one of those where we could have picked kind of any section, but this has been on the queue for a while. So let's just get it off the books, get it done, that kind of thing.
Through the chair, yes, this was considered, again, considering accessibility requirements, safety, these kinds of components. And I'm not sure what year that sidewalk was actually constructed, but it's seen some life. So it's a combination of all those factors that got us to include it. Yes.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to, I believe the Councilor Mosier talked about projected borrowing, and I'm looking at that Tannery Road culvert. That's like $4.9 million or so over the next 4 years. The storm separation plan that we're talking about funding this year at $110,000, is that meant to inform how we proceed with the Tannery Road culvert project?
Through the chair, there'll be some overlap between the master plan and the current condition assessment that we have underway. So making sure that the condition assessment and includes sort of recommendations for renewal or replacement of that culvert. So I expect those to be complementary. The master plan would include the recommendations from the condition assessment. So I see them as complementary projects. Is that answering your question?
No, it does. That's fair. I just wanted to see that the money we're spending now will be used in the future towards making these proper decisions, and obviously that's the master plan is part of that. So that's great. Thank you. 2 more, if I can be so further indulged. Moving on to the water utility budget. I see. Well, let's talk about the condition. You mentioned the transmission main renewal project that we're looking at doing. It's a lot of money we're looking at spending. Could you just maybe expand a little bit on what actually is the condition of the transmission main at this point?
Through the chair. So this was the key recommendation that came out of our GIS modeling for the water system. We're talking about such a key component to the water system. It's the pipe that gets the water from the plant to the town. So the age of that pipe, just in terms of its longevity, I mean, I think we're at the 70-year mark for that, a lot of that pipe. And then the recommendation is to increase it to a 16-inch pipe as well, which would help us get more water to the town, help us with things like fire flows that are a challenge for the town with the elevations that we're faced with, pushing the water up the hill in those fire flows. So getting greater volumes of water to the town quickly if we need them in case of an emergency, that these are kind of the things that the modeling project identified to us. So we're trying to incorporate those recommendations and improve the system in a really meaningful way to the town. That was what we were shooting for with that.
Appreciate the explanation. And then finally, stick with the water utility here, the solar array, $385,000 coming from future capital reserves. Have we looked into any potential grants from other sources, governmental or any, I know NS Power has a couple of things too, but solar seems to be the hot item right now. Is there a chance that we can get some of that covered off from another source?
Through the chair. We have applied in the past for this particular project. The funding stream that we applied for at that time, we were unsuccessful. That doesn't mean that as we see new opportunities that we won't apply and try those as well. But at this point, we have no external funding for that one.
Okay. Thank you. One last comment, though. I was just going through this budget. It seems like staff's done a tremendous job to make sure that they're spending only on what they need to spend on, and the money's coming from appropriate sources to make sure that it's we're not borrowing where we don't have to. So I just want to say thank you for the effort to put this together, and that's the end of my comments.
Thank you. Councillor Sanford put her hand up. So Councillor Sanford.
So through the chair to Tyson, following up on Councillor Mosier's point about in-house, I was wondering if it's possible to consider, if we didn't get interest in the tenders, or we only had one tender submission, might we consider using some of the funds to hire extra staff? And I understand maybe hiring extra staff could be a potential issue, but might we be able to hire extra staff to take on some of the work if our current employees were assigned to take on an extra project? So has any thought ever been given to that? So instead of using all of the funds that we would to pay a contractor, take some of those funds and hire some additional staff to kind of hold down the work, the day-to-day work, while the current crew were able to take on aspects of a new project.
So through the chair, it would be an option to us potentially. It's not one we've given a lot of consideration to, I'll be honest. Like, in construction, the construction field, there is a labor shortage at the moment in Nova Scotia. And I don't know that a short-term or a seasonal employment position would help us attract the right sorts of candidates for this kind of work, either to fill in for our public works team or help on the projects themselves. So yeah, that's kind of the advantage that tendering gives us. It's kind of that short-term 6-week smash, and the contractor comes in and does their work, and then hopefully we're all happy at the end and we say bye and might see you next time, or maybe not. So yeah, we haven't really pursued that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Jamie.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through the chair to Councillor Sanford. One thing we're always cognizant of as well is that in the public workshop, we operate in a unionized environment, so it's a bit more difficult to hire employees on very short-term basis. From a perspective of tendering, some of our work does require significant engineering design and approval. So I'll use the retaining wall in the back there. That's a complex project that I am a little bit worried about, to be honest. I'm hopeful that we get some interest in it this time around, because it is something that needs to be done. We can't wait much longer. So always in-house, we're looking for synergies with our staff to be able to use them, give them new experiences as well. And there's some things that they're very good at. They're very good at building sidewalks. And I'm not going to bring up Tanner Road, I promise, Councillor Mosher. But so we're always looking for those synergies and use them where we can. But in some cases, as Tyson mentioned, the tendering process is clean and it's just business as usual. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Now, I'd like to ask, I guess, a few, or make a few comments and ask a few questions if I may. One is on the water meters. I see that's in the budget. That's 1.2 million over the next 2 years. I'm assuming we're being made to put water meters in, or is that just something we've decided to do, or is it eventually a cost savings, or why are we doing that, I guess?
So the URB has been encouraging us to do water meters, strongly encouraging us to do water meters. I don't remember the exact date, but a few meetings ago, 2 years, 3 years maybe now, council made a motion that we would move forward on the water metering project. It offers opportunities for reduced consumption and efficiencies within the plant, as well as providing a more equitable way to bill based on usage.
Thank you. I just asked because I know that was a topic way back when, and it was always pushed off as well. So I figured eventually they would force us to do it because of the water usage and consumption mainly. So no, thank you for that. I'd just like to say that when we get to the budget part later on, number 11, to pass this, the big thing is the retaining wall is a prime example of this budget. We should really look at this hard and try to get this passed as soon as we can, because that retaining wall holds the back end basically of the town hall up, as well as the road falling into the town hall. So we need someone to tender on the back wall, retaining wall, and other things. And I think other years, for whatever reason, other things come up and RFPs were late getting out. So I'd like to see us get some of this stuff out ASAP, because we always get a better price with more than one person willing to do it. And when it comes to this building, there's been a lot of talk on this building, and personally, and it's just my personal opinion, I think when we finally get to this building, whether it's 6 months from now or a year from now, and the rubber hits the road, because I think that's what's going to happen with this building, that's when we have to go to the federal government, heavy. They sponsored Lunenburg as a UNESCO town in 95 or 96. And this is a vital part of the civic square of the whole UNESCO designation. So we are basically, our hands are tied with this building and the old fire hall of what we can and can't do to it. So if they're going to tell us what we can and can't do to it, then they should be willing to step up to the plate and help us repair it. And I think that, that's when going might get a little bit tough, but I think that's what we're going to have to do at that time. So that's just my personal opinion before we all start panicking on this building. They sponsored us in 95. It's going to look pretty bad if we lose our UNESCO designation, because this building gets boarded up and nobody's in it. So that's just my comment on the town hall. And I guess at this point, if there's no other questions or comments from council, we'll move on to number 8, correspondence on the agenda. And there's just some correspondence. 8.1 is some correspondence on Wallace Street renaming, just for information purposes. And 8.2, there's a motion in front of you. Basically, it's the Nova Scotia Federation of Municipalities are asking us to write a letter to the province for a province-wide vulnerable persons registry. It's just basically, we just need a motion to do it. I think we're one of the few provinces that do not have a vulnerable persons registry. So was someone willing to make that a motion? Moved by Councillor Duggan, seconded by Councillor Bertels. Any questions? All those in favor, right hand. All those opposed? Thank you. And then the next thing is Communities in Bloom invitation, which we normally get. So we'll move on. There's no public hearings or public information. No real business arising, unfinished business to deal with. So we're on to new business, which is what we just talked about for the last little while. So 11.1 is the town general capital budget. So we have some options here. We can approve this budget and get the RFPs out. We can send it back to staff if anybody has any suggestions or to retweak it or whatever. So is someone prepared to make the motion in front of us? Moved by Councillor Mosher, seconded by Councillor Sanford. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, raise your right hand. All those opposed. 11.2, water utility capital budget. Once again, same two options on the table. Is someone prepared to make the motion? So moved by Counselor Bertels, seconded by Counselor Duggan. Any questions, comments, whatever? All those in favor, raise your right hand. All those opposed? And then the last thing, 11.3, reallocation of funds, lift station communication upgrades. Is someone prepared to make that motion? Moved by Counselor Duggan, seconded by Counselor Ernst. Any discussion, question, comments? Hearing none. All those in favor? Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Tyson.
Sorry, Your Worship, I do have a staff report on this item.
Okay, you can give it.
Sorry to interrupt you there.
Yeah, no worries. It's pretty straightforward, but go ahead.
Okay. So the recommendation is that the council approve a reallocation of funds within the 23-24 town capital budget of $50,000 from the suction line upgrades item to a new lift street communications upgrades item for improvements at the Effluent and Star Street lift stations. The alternatives to that motion facing council are to not approve the reallocation of funds from the 23-24 capital budget from suction line upgrade and instruct staff to work on sourcing the $50,000 elsewhere. And then the second option would be to not approve the reallocation of the funds and defer this item to a future budget. So background for this item, through previous years, the town has undertaken staged communication upgrades to our network of lift stations. The communication upgrades to external lift stations were prioritized and have been completed, leaving only the Effluent and Star Street lift stations, which are both in close vicinity to the wastewater treatment plant, remaining. These two were left to last due to the complexity with their hardware associated with the wastewater treatment plant. In terms of the suction line upgrades item, this was included in 23-24 to replace suction lines at Star Street and Blue Nose Drive. In the period since this was included, our operators have very resourcefully found a solution to the issue, which was low cost. So this no longer is a priority for our team. Staff did include some provision for the communication upgrades for these two lift stations in the 23-24 based on estimated costs we received in 2022. In the meantime, these costs have escalated considerably, and we've developed an alternative approach to perform the work, which will simplify the ongoing operations and add safety for our team. The estimated budget to complete this scope is now $50,000. With the budget now reaching this magnitude, we believe it's appropriate to separate this out from the various items and create its own item for the work. Again, this reallocation from the suction lines is our best attempt to prioritize work, use the available resources we have to deliver the biggest outcome, the best outcome for the team and the town. In terms of the financial aspects, the amount approved in the 23-24 capital budget for the suction line upgrades was $50,000 with funding from the sewer reserves. There's a typo in the report here. I apologize for that. It should read the reallocation does not's an important word there, increase the overall capital spending or funds from the sewer reserves. So that completes the report.
Thank you. So we have a motion on the floor that's been moved and seconded. Any other questions, concerns? All those in favor, right hand. All those opposed, motion carried. So now we'll move on to number 12, which is notice of motions, information requests, and individual council reports or information. So I'll open the floor to my colleagues. Councilor Mosier.
Thank you, Worship. Through to perhaps the clerk or the CAO, I'm not exactly sure. But I'd like to address something that I would call a non-confidence issue related to the position of deputy mayor. I believe that the deputy mayor's role is one that supports mayor and council. Council Halverson has displayed anything but this type of behavior since his nomination in November. As an example, he has not even attended one single meeting in person since he's been nominated. So I would like to know what process I can bring forward tonight to remove Councilor Halverson from the position of deputy mayor and replace him with someone that will fulfill the role more appropriately and respectfully.
Thank you, Councilor Moser. At this point, I'm going to declare a recess for 10 minutes and leave staff talk about this because this is new to me. I don't know if it's new. Like, do you know where to go with this next?
Through the chair to Councilor Mosher. I do appreciate the recess, Mr. Mayor. I think we'll need it. There's a couple of things that come to mind. One of which we can't rescind a motion that's already been acted upon, which this one has. The only option we may have is to amend that motion to end the term quicker. So whatever council would see fit. Tied to both of those, council would likely need to waive the motion notice as well. So typically put a notice of motion that's spoken to at the next council meeting. So we need to waive those as well. But if you allow us 10 minutes recess, just have a kind of a chat through the MGA as well as our internal policies, I think we could probably have a pretty informative answer. I just need to have a chance to go through it myself. Thank you.
Thank you, Jamie. At this time, I'm going to call a 10-minute recess. Thank you. Just wanted to hit the recess button. So we're going to start up again, and I'm going to hand the floor over to CAO Jamie Doyle.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to mention that when I took this job, I was told I would never be bored. And you are certainly holding up your end of the bargain. I appreciate the indulgence. We were a little bit longer than we thought, I guess understandably. So the clerk and I have been looking into the MGA as well as our own policies and procedures, as well as Robert's Rules of Order. Robert's Rules of Order, something we look into when, or we go to guidance when our policies or procedures are a little bit vague. So the MGA doesn't get down to this level of detail with municipal governments. They subject municipal governments to come up with their own policies and procedures on how to handle these things. Our procedure states that when a motion's been acted upon, it can't be rescinded. But as I mentioned, it can be amended, and that's where we look to Robert's Rules of Order for that guidance. The fact that the deputy mayor has already acted in the role, you cannot simply say thanks very much and part ways. What you need to do is, what Councilor Mosher would need to do is amend the original motion from November to have it end today, if you wanted that to end today. So the first step would first need to be a notice or a vote to waive the notice of motion that would require of council to pass, of course, a majority. Once that vote's been taken and passed, then we can move forward. If it doesn't, it kind of dies there. So if that's passed, so if you go through and you vote to waive the notice of motion, then we would have an amended motion from the original November 14th, 2023 meeting. That would read that council appoint Councilor Halverson as deputy mayor until January 9th, 2024. If that passes, then you would need to do a second notice or waiver of notice to appoint somebody else as the new deputy mayor. If that passes, then we need to have names from the floor. If there's more than one, then we'd have to do an election, which we've done before, where you all write names on a blank piece of paper, give it to the clerk, and the clerk counts out who wins. That, in a nutshell, is basically how you could achieve it in the short time frame that we've had to kind of research it. So, Mr. Mayor, should you want to proceed, or should Counselor Mosher wish to proceed, we would first start with that notice to waive the notice of motion requirement.
Okay, so we're looking for a motion to waive the notice of motion requirement that's currently in our rules. It's been moved by Counselor Mosher, seconded by Counselor Bertles. Deputy Mayor Halverson, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I'd like, before we start down this path, I'm looking at the Municipal Government Act here. Deputy Mayor, Deputy Warden. Section 16, paragraph 2. Prior to the selection of a deputy mayor or deputy warden, the council shall determine the term of office of the deputy mayor or deputy warden. So I've been selected. The term was dictated. I'm not sure how you go back and relitigate the Municipal Government Act from the council floor.
I'll leave that with Jamie Doyle.
And thank you, Mr. Mayor. And through the deputy mayor, that is something that we did look into, is that section 16 of the MJ, which does state that you do have to appoint one. It doesn't say in there for how long, and it doesn't dictate that level of detail. I know in my previous roles, I haven't always seen where a deputy mayor sits for a year. Sometimes it's rotated every 6 months through every council member. It really depends on council. And that's when it comes down to our own policies and procedures to fill in that gap of where we may be vague. And subsequent to that, if it's still vague, even still, we look to Robert's Rules of Order of amending motions. And really, to amend the original motion based on the term is the only thing that I can think of, or that we actually got to, that would allow, I guess, a shorter term to be determined, if I can use that term. So that would be, but just by the way I outlined, you would amend the original motion to shorten the term to end today. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. So there's a motion on the floor. Is there any other?
Excuse me, I've got more to say about this. So,
Okay.
again, we're not going back in time. The MGA is very clear. So prior to this election of the deputy mayor, council shall determine the term. Council determined the term was 1 year. I'm in the role. As an elected representative, I was duly elected by the council, following the rules. So I'm not sure how Robert's rules or our internal policies would supersede the MGA.
The way I understand it being explained by the CEO is the MGA isn't clear on term. So I can go back to when I was here previously, we used to do the deputy mayor role. One time it was every 2 years, then it was every year. At one time, I think it was 4 years when I first
And
got
you
elected.
selected that term
so I
prior
think,
to that deputy mayor being elected.
So I wasn't finished deputy mayor, but so that's the way it was done. We set the terms of the position. So I guess that's the part that they found when they went in my office and researched things. So I guess my thinking is I'm going to take the direction of our CAO on this, and we have a motion on the floor. So now we're going to deal with the motion. So I'm going to call for a vote.
Excuse me, I'm not finished talking yet. I've got more to say about this. Before we do call for the vote, I would actually caution you to say, why don't we park that motion for a moment and come back, allow the CAO and the clerk to further fully examine this so that we're not revisiting this at another meeting. I think that we may want to get some guidance from the Department of Municipal Affairs to be very clear on what we're doing here.
I'll refer this to the CAO. Do you think we're okay proceeding in the manner you suggested a minute ago?
Through the chair to the mayor and to deputy mayor. The MGA, as the deputy mayor pointed out, does suggest and does state you need to appoint a deputy mayor, which you've done. The MGA doesn't suggest that you can't amend the term. Now, the other option would be for this to be a notice of motion and bring it back next meeting, but that's completely up to council. I would certainly endeavor to call municipal affairs to have a second opinion about it. In my experience, I haven't gotten very far with municipal affairs. I'm not sure that they would provide us any opinion of what we should be doing with our own council. That's just my experience speaking. It's not to suggest a way to go either way. This is completely a council decision. The advice that we've given you, I believe to be solid, and it is vague. And I think the MGA is vague on purpose so that councils can govern themselves accordingly. They would suggest the bare minimum of what you need to do. Thank you.
Thank you. So can we move forward with the motion?
I've still got, I'd just like to ask you where was the MGA vague in saying that council shall determine the term of the office? We've determined the term of the office as 1 year. Where does can you please show me where the Municipal Government Act says that we can then go in and amend that term?
Through the chair, the deputy mayor, section 16 of the Municipal Government Act does not prescribe or state that the term cannot be amended. And that's what I'm suggesting, not that it hasn't been determined already by the last meeting in November of 2023. What I'm suggesting is council can choose to amend that if they choose to.
That's not the way I interpret the MGA, and I think the motion itself is out of order.
Okay, well, thank you. Does anyone else have any comments? Hearing none, we have a motion on the floor. We're going to move for the motion. So the motion is to, I guess, forego the notice of motion period.
Excuse me.
Deputy Mayor, we're at a motion now. You've had
Oh,
about
I know,
5
but
opportunities to speak on this. So we're going to move forward with the motion.
I would like to ask one more question. Can we actually remove a mayor this way?
Good question. I have no idea.
Well, this is kind of the fundamental argument that we're making right now. This is an elected position that was, it went through a
See,
process.
Deputy Mayor, the mayor was elected by the citizens. The deputy mayor was elected by the people around this table. So you can probably remove the mayor if you want to have another election, but I don't think the council can remove me as the mayor. So I think that's the difference. We, the council, elected you as deputy mayor. The citizens of the town of Lunenburg elected me as mayor. So that would be the big difference. So we're going to move forward now with this motion because technically, according to our town bylaws, you get to speak twice on an issue and you've spoken more than twice. So we're going to move forward with the motion. So there's a motion on the floor. All those in favor, raise your right hand. All those opposed? Motion carried. Now, according to the CAO, the next step, if we're going to proceed in this fashion, is to amend the original motion on November 23rd. So is there anybody prepared to amend the motion? Councillor Moser. Is there a seconder? Councillor Bertels. Is there any further discussion or questions on that motion? Hearing none, all those in favor? Raise your right hand. All those opposed? Okay, seeing none. Now we need a notice of motion to change the dates of the term of mayor and elect a new deputy mayor. So are we going to have a motion to remove the next notice of motion, I guess? So I need a motion for that. Councillor Mosier, seconded by Councillor Bertels. Any further discussion on that one? Hearing none. All those in favor, raise your right hand. All those opposed? And now the final step, the way I've written it down, and I could be corrected if I'm wrong, Jamie, is now we need a motion to elect a new deputy mayor, and the terms of that position will be, Councillor Sanford. Go ahead.
I would like to nominate Councillor Mosier as deputy mayor.
Is there a seconder before we proceed? It's been seconded by Councillor Duggan and Councillor Bertel. So Councillor Mosier.
Well, if it's just the same, I would like to decline that. If someone else, would be willing to do this, I'd be quite happy to, just fulfill my term as a counselor. That's fine. I really appreciate your support. I've appreciated your support the whole way along with this council. I've told you before. I would like, if it was, I'd like to nominate Stephen, Councillor Ernst for it as well. So, I mean, I'd like to decline. I'd like to nominate Stephen if he would be willing to accept. I'd decline if he accepts. I'll put it to you that way.
Okay, so we have a motion now. We have one decline possibly, and we have a motion for Councillor Ernst, or a seconder for that motion. Okay, I'll ask it. So first of all, is there a seconder for Councillor? Okay, it's seconded by Councillor Duggan. So we have that on the floor. But before we do that, Councillor Halverson, you haven't voted on any of these. You have to vote, right?
You have to send a note to Caleb.
So that we don't believe. You just.
So we're all good then, I've been told. So we have a motion and a seconder for deputy mayor, a second motion and seconder for Councillor Ernst to be deputy mayor. So now my next question is, Councillor Ernst, the floor is yours to accept or decline.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm certainly in a precarious situation because we certainly appreciate Councillor Mosier's tenure as deputy, but and knowing that he's looking forward to a retirement, I do accept the nomination. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ernst. So there's one nomination on the floor. Is there any other nominations at this time? Any other nominations at this time? Seeing no other nominations. All those in favor of Councillor Ernst being deputy mayor, raise your right hand. All those opposed? Does Ed have to vote? Councillor Halverson, you have to vote or declare a conflict of interest in this issue.
I think the whole motion is out of order, so I'm not going to vote. So I guess you have to, if the unrecorded vote, so vote in the negative, if I'm not mistaken, isn't it, Raquel?
So is that declaring a conflict or a negative vote?
Like I said, I feel like the motion's out of order, so I'm not going to register a vote.
That's really not an option. You have to either declare a conflict or vote one way or the other. I'm just doing what I'm told from the people.
No, I understand. I understand, Jamie. Record it however you wish.
Okay, we'll record it as a conflict of interest. How's that sound? So hearing no other things, motion's carried 6 to not sure. And I congratulate Councillor Ernst as the new deputy mayor Ernst. So nothing else on this part of the agenda. I'll get a motion to move in camera. Motion by Councillor Bertle, seconded by Deputy Mayor Ernst, and we'll take another 5 to 10 minute recess.